Welcome and thank you so much for joining us in this conversation on memories of volunteering in healthcare. I am Fiona from Woodbridge Museum of the Institute of Mental Health, and I'm very happy to be your host for today. So today's program is part of the Singapore Heritage Fest 2021, and one of the themes this year is the history of Singapore healthcare. Of course, we have come so far in terms of the advances of medical science, the changing landscape of healthcare education and research. However, we must not forget our efforts and contributions of the healthcare volunteers in this transformation journey. So today, we're very happy to have three guests. They are veteran volunteers in different healthcare organizations, and they will be sharing their experience, stories, and memories with us. So let me start. I'll introduce our first guest, Catherine Chua. Catherine is a very good co-worker of mine in IMH. She is our volunteer manager. And because she's a retired nurse, she spent the last 50 years of her life caring for people with mental illness. Besides starting out as a volunteer IMH back in the early 90s, she is also an active volunteer in the grassroots community as well as the Singapore Nursing Association. More recently, just last year, during the peak of the pandemic, she volunteered as a duty care officer to man the hotline, the National Care Hotline, helping people in distress. So we'll talk to Catherine later. So next, we have Irene Lim. Irene is the president of the Lupus Association Singapore, and she is also a volunteer with the Lupus Patient Support Group of Tan Tock Seng Hospital. So back in 1992, Irene lost her sister to lupus. Back then, she had very little knowledge of the illness. Less than a decade later, she found out that she was diagnosed with the same disease. She had to go through aggressive treatment for the illness, and she had nobody to turn to. So she went to the Lupus Association and she got the assistance. Subsequently, she decided to be a member and volunteer of this association too. So Irene has a very, very nice story to tell. We will hear from her later. Last but not least, we have Mr. Chow Peng Yip. Peng Yip is our volunteer leader of Kwangwaishu Hospital. Both he and his wife have spent the last 17 years serving the patients and residents of this organization. So besides organizing events and activities for the elderly, he is also training and guiding new volunteers as they come on board. So later in the program, Peng Yip will also share with us what he did to get Kwangwaishu Hospital into the Singapore Book of Records. All right, so are we ready to go deeper in this conversation? I surely have a bunch of questions to ask them, but if you have questions for them also, feel free to type in the comment box below. At the end of this program, we'll have some time to address your questions. So, all right, Catherine, shall we start with you?
Yes.
So how long have you been a volunteer in IMH, and why did you decide to continue to be a volunteer manager and volunteer after your retirement?
Yeah, I started volunteering in the 1990s, and since I became a volunteer manager in 2012, I felt I could do a lot more for the patients. Okay, working as a nurse in the hospital itself, I frequently hear these patients telling me, I want to go home, I want to help my parents, I want to find a job. And when I heard all these things, it just dawned onto me that all of them want to lead a normal life so that they can be back home. So if for medical conditions that they cannot be discharged, so as a volunteer manager, I felt that I can do a lot more for the patient to ever have a normal life. So what I did was I brought in volunteers. Volunteers make a difference in their life by organizing activities for them. And by doing all this, they can actually make a lot of difference for the patients who are staying longer in the hospital itself. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Catherine, for sharing your motivation factor. So Irene, So when you were diagnosed with lupus, I'm sure you had to go through treatment and aggressive treatments, in fact, and you said that your kidneys were not functioning properly, right? It affected your kidneys. So back then, where did you find the motivation to even help other patients in similar plight?
Well, when I was undergoing treatment, I was anxious and fearful, like you said, especially because my kidneys were in bad shape. So I was, of course, very concerned and worried. And then, despite losing my sister to lupus some 8 years before I was diagnosed, my knowledge of the illness was quite limited because awareness during that time was low. So, out of anxiousness, as well as the desire to learn more about my condition and to be able to help myself, I reached out to the Lupus Association. And I recall then that when my sister passed away in 1992, Lupus Association has sent a wreath. So it was very comforting talking to the volunteers. They were helpful, warm, friendly, and it was a great help and relief to be able to speak to people who understands the condition and who can advise you and even console you. So I was very inspired by them, and I decided that when I get better, I was going to do the same thing and help fellow patients. So as a patient volunteer who recovered from a serious illness with no cure, I have always strived to lead a normal life by trying to be a good walking advertisement for the patients, so that I can encourage them and give them hope that even though they are struggling while they are unwell, that they can get well and they can lead a normal life.
Thank you very much, Irene. I'm sure patients with lupus, they are very thankful. They must have felt very anxious as you were many years ago when you were diagnosed, and now you are helping them. Okay, so Peng Yip, you have also been a long-term volunteer with Kwangwaishu Hospital. So you mentioned that you were brought in by a friend, but what made you continue, for the next 17 years in like what you do?
Oh, yes. That was in 2004, 17 years ago. A friend of mine invited me to volunteer at the Kwangwaishu Hospital. I concurred without hesitation. That started my volunteering journey. I used to visit the old folks' home in my youngest day, and I saw those elderly sitting in the ward look a bit lonely in the boardroom. That stirred up my passion and a desire to do something meaningful for them to improve their emotional well-being and improve their life. I want to bring sunshine to them and bring smile to the face. Starting with Kwangwaishu, actually, as a volunteer, can fulfill actually my wish, which I have a long time ago, and interact with the elderly actually also can improve actually my something I also learned a lot from them on how to live a more fulfilling life. The experience that I gained after these 70 years of volunteering allowed me to better appreciate and treasure the people relationship around me at the present moment. Thank you.
I see. So volunteering in a way also, helps you in your personal growth. Okay. So now, can we find out more about your volunteers and activities? Irene, so how was it like at the Lupus Association in the early days? What were the volunteers like, and how would you compare them to the volunteers you have today?
Okay, when I first joined the Lupus Association as a volunteer, most of the volunteers were the older people whose children have grown up or they have retired and had time on their hands. So we enjoyed meeting up and socializing with each other. Now, in recent times, the younger generation who step up as volunteers, they are tech savvy and they prefer to reach out via the social media. So face-to-face meetups are not so important to them as they are to older people like us, as we enjoy the physical social interaction a lot more. So there are veteran volunteers with us who have been together since the 1980s, and they still make time and effort to meet every Wednesday to do patient visits at the Tan Tock Seng Hospital and to socialize, do handicrafts. And this is a tradition which has not changed since the beginning.
Wow, I guess the older folks, you are into social interaction and you must be physically together, right? Because young people like us, we just pick up the phone and then we just call one another. No need for coffee shop talks. But we operate differently, but it's okay. So Catherine, for us, I know we started with only a handful of volunteers from the nearby church back in the Old Woodbridge Hospital. So now you are looking after like more than 400 regular volunteers. So how have the activities changed or evolved over these decades?
Oh, yes. As what Fiona has mentioned, we started off with just only a handful of church people. So when they came on to offer their help, this is where it started. So they became friends. And after a while, with all this over the decades, we find that there's a lot of awareness in terms of mental health. So because of this, a lot of people are coming in from all walks of life. Majority are students, they are working adults, we have retirees, and even homemakers. And we have actually even companies who want to do their corporate social responsibility to come in. And even all these things that actually enhance the life of the patients with a lot of activities, because being staying in the ward for quite a long time, they need people to come in to make a difference in their life. So all these activities actually have changed their lives a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I've met some of our volunteers and they are really very passionate. I mean, even those people in the corporates, like, they will paint mural walls in the wards and they'll be so excited about it, the interaction they have with our patients. So Peng Yip, for your volunteers in Kwangwaishu Hospital, right? So we have the nursing home, we've got satellite centers, but who do the volunteers mostly befriend with? Is it the residents in the nursing home or the patients at the satellite centers or hospital?
Oh, yes. Kwangwaishu Hospital operates a nursing home. It means that the residents volunteer work with mainly the elderly. The hospital also offer other services at the Satellite Care Center for senior universities. It means that our volunteering opportunities are diverse, as we can interact with a different group of elderly. The 4 care centers will provide help and assisted living services created to their elderly, as well as the wellness activities to keep them active during their golden years. For my case, I mostly work with the residents at the hospital. Occasionally, I do help out at the Satellite Care Center. As Kwangwaishu is also a charity organization, and they hold fundraising events. So the volunteer can also choose to be involved in the fundraising activities. That's it.
Okay, so it seems that there's also like a lot of activities that Kwangwaishu volunteers can participate in. So audience out there, if you are interested in volunteering, maybe not now because it's the time of the pandemic, but when we get better, you can volunteer with Kwangwaishu Hospital too. Okay, so now I'm very curious whether volunteers, when they decide to volunteer with any healthcare organization, what kind of considerations do they have and what kind of like misconceptions that we can help them to correct or to bust some myths. So can we start with Irene? So even before this dialogue, I briefly went to research on lupus because I realized that my knowledge on lupus is also very, very limited. And after Googling, I found out there is an autoimmune disease. I Googled some pictures and I saw patients with lupus having rashes over the cheeks and the nose. So I'm just wondering if the layman out there, the members of public, would wonder if people with lupus, is this condition contagious?
No, lupus is not contagious. You can't catch lupus from someone. It is not a virus or bacteria, and the cause of lupus is still unknown. So, some people with an inherited predisposition for lupus may develop the disease when they come into contact with something in the environment like stress or sunlight, or even perhaps some medications, but it is not conclusively genetically linked, though we do sometimes see more than one patient in a family, rarely though. So the facial rash over the nose and cheeks that looks like a butterfly is known as the butterfly or the mala rash, and it's a distinctive and common sign of lupus, although it's not in every case. So that is why we need to continue to educate the public on this disease, and for them to learn the disease management, and also know where to seek support and help where it's available.
I see. So
Yes.
I also read that chemotherapy is one of the treatment for lupus. Do people think that it's a type of cancer?
Lupus is not cancer. Lupus is a autoimmune disease whereby the body's immune system, instead of protecting the healthy tissues, they attack their own tissues and organs, and any organ can be affected. It can be the heart, the liver, the lungs, even the brain, the skin, joints, but the common one is the kidneys. So that's why it's called an autoimmune disease. So yes, we do use
Chemotherapy?
chemotherapy drugs in lupus, but we call them cytotoxic drugs, and they are used to actually suppress an overactive immune system.
I see. There's so much that we need to learn about lupus. In fact, this month is World Lupus Awareness Month, and yeah, maybe we should go search it up and find out more about lupus. Okay, let's talk about mental illness. Catherine, so this is our pet topic, right? Sometimes when we take the taxi, the drivers will look at us and like, are you a doctor, a nurse? If not, are you a patient? And very often they will ask whether mental illness is contagious, whether the people working there, or sometimes, do they behave oddly? Are our patients violent or unpredictable? So what do you have to say about these statements and misconceptions?
Okay, the first thing is mental illness is not contagious, because if not, what will happen to all the healthcare people working in IMH, the doctors, the nurses, the psychiatrists, the physiotherapists, and occupational therapists? So this is really not true. But honestly, there is a lot of misperception and myths about mental illness. So firstly, the people will think that, mental illness is very unpredictable, they are violent. But these are all actually myths. Actually, to think over, the media has a lot of influence, even the movies and even the newspaper, they tend to portray mental illness as violent and very unpredictable. Actually, most of them would have is more or less of a bad behavior. You look at the abusers. Even the abusers will ask, are they violent and they are also mentally ill? This is not true. This is also could be part of their bad behavior. And in regards to violence, majority of the people will feel that patients are violent. But if you have been following the news, look at the news. Not all the people who have committed murders are actually mentally ill. It could be some other unacceptable social behavior that they have. So all this is about misperception about mental illness. So mental people are actually people like you and me. They are the people who need support and need understanding.
So mental illness can be managed, and not everybody with mental illness, they are violent, or mental illness is definitely not contagious. Okay?
Yes.
So these are my questions, and thank you for busting the myths and correcting the misconceptions. But if you have questions for our guests, feel free to type in the comment box below, and at the end of it, we will come to address your questions. So let's move on. We talk about the fears and challenges volunteers face. So Ping Yip, can you share with us some of the challenges that you think volunteers might face, and how do you help them overcome these barriers?
Okay, the residents each have their own personalities and preferences, and it may be difficult to accommodate to each and every one of them. For the more difficult cases, the best way we have to work with them is to persuade them patiently. We also keep a close eye on the dynamics among the residents. Before putting them into groups for activities, we also have to ensure that the group members gel with each other in order to provide a pleasurable experience for all. However, such difficult situations are rare, and it has so far not hindered the recruitment process of recruitment for the volunteer.
Okay, thank you very much, Ping Yip. I guess when we want to volunteer, it's like meeting a new friend or talking to a stranger. You must build the rapport, and when we understand the person better, we will be better. We will be in a better position to interact with him in a meaningful way, right? So Irene, how about your association volunteers? Do they find it difficult to engage, especially patients with lupus?
Well, as volunteers, we do at times come across patients who refuse to speak to us or even doubt our intention. And there are also those who are in denial, so they refuse to discuss about the illness. But we remain patient, and then we continue to persevere. Being a volunteer for Lupus Support Group, we often support patients who are seriously ill by being there for them, including watching and accompanying them through their journey to recovery. And we witness recoveries as well as deaths, I'm afraid, but fortunately rarely. And deaths can be hard to cope with sometimes.
I think death it's taboo, and sometimes when it happens to us, we find it difficult to cope as well. So I guess your association volunteers also have to go through this grieving process, and hopefully time will heal. Okay, so now let's talk about your fond memories. So maybe we start with Peng Yip. So in your 17 years volunteering with Kwangwaishu Hospital, can you tell us, share with us one of your most memorable experience?
Okay. I have been assisting the hospital in the Mid-Autumn Festival events, assisting and designing and making the lanterns in various sizes. The most memorable one was in 2019, where Kwangwaishu Hospital broke the largest lantern record in the Singapore Book of Records, where more than 1,000 lanterns decorate the 34 meters corridor of the concept building housing their heritage gallery. Kwangwaishu has been organizing fundraising activities for many years, and I have been helping out during all these different kinds of events.
Thank you. Catherine, maybe we should also do something to get into the Singapore Book of Records like Kwangwaishu Hospital. Maybe you can give us some advice, huh? So how about Catherine yourself? Because you've been with our hospital for more than 50 years. I know you've got 101 stories to tell. But maybe just one memorable case or incident that you can share with us?
Oh, yes. Okay, I was in the recovery ward, and there was this patient who really typically present as a patient with schizophrenia. She has very long hair and she walks aimlessly, just straight. And when you have conversation with her, she's always answering you yes or no. But I have discovered that she has good talents, like she has good typing skills, and her writing is always very beautiful. One day, to my surprise, she came to me, she said, "Nurse, I want to get my hair perm because my auntie want to bring me home." It was a great surprise to me because she has been staying in the ward for so many years with no relatives. So I said, "Oh yes, I will do that for you." So I arranged with my home dresser. So okay, I will bring you there. And we had a good journey talking. And when she arrived there, we had a hair perm. It was so long. It took 4 hours just for a hair perm. And the hairdresser was me, where is she from? I said, oh, she has not been perming her hair for a very long time. So after the 4 hours, I brought her back to the ward. She was totally transformed. The nurses who saw her say, huh, are you so and so? She said, yes, that's me. And she was totally, nobody could recognize her. And after that, she was discharged and she actually lived in the community until today. And that was something that I felt as a volunteer, as a staff, I could do something for her. And that makes a lot of difference for her. And I'm so glad that up to today, she is still functioning very well in the community.
Wow. So mental illness recovery is really possible, and they're just like you and I. They have their needs. We all want to look beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Catherine. How about Irene? So you are a volunteer with the Tan Tock Seng Lupus Patient Support Group, right? So was there any patient that you particularly remember? Can you share with us?
Okay, with better drugs and treatments these days, lupus patients, they tend to fare quite well. So I do have many happy stories I can recall, but the memory of one patient who was not so lucky remained in my mind. There was a middle-aged patient, a male, who was warded at Tan Tock Seng Hospital where we carried out weekly ward visits. So I recall that the first time we visited him, he refused to even look at us and even wave us away. So we didn't get near him. And then the next week when we visited him again, he still did not want to talk to us, but this time he didn't wave us away. So we said a few words to him and then we left. And then the third week we went to visit him again. And this time he gave us a little nod and a weak smile. And he even motioned for us to sit down next to his bed, So we chatted a little, and he told us that he was very worried about his medical condition, which was not responding to the treatments that he was having. So unfortunately, a few days later, we were informed of his passing. So not long after that, we received a donation from his family in his name. So I was very saddened by the loss, but deeply touched that he actually recognized and appreciated our efforts after all. So that's our work.
I see. That is, I think, his way of saying thank you to you and your volunteers. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing all your stories. Okay, now, I'm sure maybe me or our people in the audience, after being inspired by our 3 healthcare volunteers, after this session, you want to rush to sign up with a healthcare organization to volunteer, right? But we want some golden advice from the 3 of you, okay? So maybe we start with Catherine. If there's one piece of golden advice that you have to give to people like us, first-time volunteers, what would it be?
Okay, volunteers in IMH play a very important role in the hospital. You are the healthcare, you are the health ambassadors. You are our spokesman to spread the words and help to destigmatize mental illness. So this is very important because there's a lot of myths surrounding mental illness. By your experience with us, you will tell the people, what you all have thought of is all myths. It's all not true. The people over there are very happy and they are very, very approachable. They are very friendly. They miss us. They want us to be their friend. So as an advice, do come and volunteer. Inspire the patients that they are people like you and me, and they are also human beings, and they also deserve a quality of life. The meaning of life is brought in by the volunteers, and by doing this, so you are doing your part to actually help the patients, help those people who are around you, and also helping yourself.
Okay, that's a very good piece of advice. How about Irene? What would you say?
Well, in this fast-moving world today, people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, they will invariably be busy pursuing their careers, setting up their families, and so on. So usually people in their mid-40s upwards, they would have more time to set aside for volunteering. So it would be definitely ideal for the younger generation to engage in more volunteer work and to, by say, volunteering as a group of friends together, or even as a young family together as a means of bonding. So I think volunteerism should be encouraged for everyone, regardless of age group, because it's never too young or too old to volunteer.
That's right. Okay, Pengi, you must end with a bang, okay? After your advice, if you can give me this golden piece of advice, I'll sign up with Kwangwaishu Hospital as a volunteer. Okay? Okay, what would you say? Pengi?
Okay, in recent times, we see more the young, energetic, and enthusiastic individuals joining us as volunteers. This is a good sign, and this is great because they can inject more vibrancy and diversification into the volunteering scenes. Those who are interested in volunteering, I would advise them to keep their passion alive and continue to serve in helping the vulnerable community from their heart. If you wish to live life to the fullest and make it more meaningful, become a volunteer in Kwangwaishu and help the vulnerable individual to lead a better life. From the bottom of your heart, think of a way to help improve their life and go for it.
Okay, very good. So since
Okay,
volunteering...
eventually, sorry.
Yeah,
Eventually, okay. I just want to say something that it has been my joy and happiness for the past 17 years to serve as a volunteer at the Kwangwaishu Hospital. I have learned to appreciate life and how to fulfill it, to make it more meaningful, bringing joy to others, especially the underprivileged ones, and make them feel that they are not being regretted. So adding value to their life is actually the ultimate goal for being a volunteer. So join Kwangwaishu as a volunteer. We welcome you. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So since volunteering is for any age, right, regardless of age, religion, or anything, okay, after this session, okay, I will try to get my family and kids to volunteer with Kwangwaishu Hospital. So thank you very much, the three of you, for sharing your experience. I'm sure we had a very meaningful conversation today. So those are the questions that I had for you all, and you answered very well. But now to our audience, if you have burning questions for our three veteran volunteers as well, you can type it in the comment box below and we will come to you later. So stay tuned. Welcome back, and we are into our Q&A session. So just now I had asked all my questions. So let us see like what questions you guys have for our guests. Okay, Irene, this question is for you from Mr. Ng Po Chun. Is psoriasis the same as lupus?
Some lupus patients, they do suffer from more than one autoimmune disease. So it's not the same as lupus, though it is the only thing common is that it's an autoimmune disease.
Okay. So
Yes.
it's not the same.
Yes.
Okay, next question, Catherine. This question is from Jerry. So when you were a nurse, so what roles did our volunteers play, and how have these roles changed?
Okay, thank you for the question. Okay, it all started with being befriending, because they will say, I do not have any skills, so what am I to start with? So the befriending one is so simple. You just sit next to the patient and you start talking. And that is very important because they are very lonely. So befriending is one, and you learn a lot from the patient themselves through the conversation. And as the days goes by, you get to know the patient better. And that's where the patient will tell you what they want to do. So they say, oh, I like to do painting and I like to go for walks. So over the years, as the groups come in, the type of activity has changed. Change in terms of whatever they do in the ward to extending to out of the hospital. Things like they have gone out for outings. And because recently, because of the pandemic, the volunteers are very quick to jump on the virtual platform. And, our patients are human beings and they need the interaction between face to face. Pandemic prevents them from this from happening. They are very quick to go on the Zoom. So through Zoom, they have organized a lot of activities. Even whatever they have done, it's still on. For example, celebrating birthdays, festivals like Hari Raya, Christmas, Chinese New Year, Deepavali. And they even conduct workshops through virtually. And it's very interesting to see how the patient actually can respond to the screen and working on it. And the volunteers are very happy. And besides that, they also go on a virtual tour. Like they have gone to Gardens by the Bay, going to the zoo, even going to art museum. All these things are very different. So you all just to know what are needs of the patient and get things going, organized for them. Yeah, thank you.
So even during this pandemic, our volunteers actively engage our patients, I guess. Okay, the next question is also for Catherine from Jess.
Yes.
Do volunteers undergo training before they volunteer with IMH?
Oh, yes, yes. Because IMH is a specialized hospital. So there are things that a volunteer need to know. For example, we'll take them through the orientation in terms of what the hospital is about, some of the landscape about mental health in Singapore, and we take them through the policies. They need to know what are the policies that encompass volunteers. And of course, the communication is very important. How to communicate with patients, because our patients do have residual symptoms of their illness. So we need to communicate with them in terms if the hallucinations come in or they don't feel like doing anything, the mood disorder. So communication is very important. And of course, the risk. Being a mental hospital, there's always this thing of unpredictable element. So we need to know, let the volunteers know what are the risks encompassing volunteering. Simple things like looking out for falls, looking out for drowsiness, some of these things that the volunteers can help. So all this encompass all the orientation, and of course, physical orientation to the ward is also important. We need to let them see what is the environment. Unfortunately, during this time, we are unable to do so. We hope we can open up soon and volunteers can come in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. In fact, I heard that we have so many potential volunteers who want to join us, and that's like a happy problem, right? So yes. Hopefully, we can start engaging our volunteers after this pandemic is over.
Yes.
Okay, so the next question, Peng Yip. So this question is from Victoria. Okay, so she wants to volunteer with Kwangwaishu Hospital, but then, it's the pandemic time, right? It's COVID. So how do volunteers continue to interact or befriend patients?
At the moment, actually Kwangwaishu is closed to all the volunteering services. But we still sometimes we still through phone and call the hospital and ask about the patient. How is the condition and all this. At this moment, all the activities has suspended, so we have no way to get in touch with the patient at the present moment. Hopefully that when this is over, we can go back to the hospital and interact with the patient again.
Okay, thank you so much, Peng Yip. Okay, so we have two similar questions from Gurmit and Sing Yi. So they are asking, how would you encourage youths to volunteer? Like, some of them may be unsure of interacting with patients, either with like mental illness or with lupus, or some of our elderlies who might be quite sensitive when it comes to talking about their emotions and their past. So maybe Irene, you can start.
Okay. Actually, at Tan Tock Seng Hospital, they do have a volunteer management program. In fact, they have about 32 groups of volunteers under the volunteer management umbrella. And they give very good training. And of course, Tan Tock Seng Hospital, they are very supportive of the volunteers. So other than a training, showing appreciation, and of course the recognition for volunteers, they ensure that the welfare of the volunteer is also taken care of. So to volunteer with the Tan Tock Seng Hospital, you just need to approach their volunteer management. As for Lupus Association, we started off as a patient-led patient support group. So most of our volunteers are patients themselves, because we want people who is living with the condition to talk to people who are suffering a flare or being newly diagnosed, so that they can understand the patient better. So, but we do have volunteers who are caregivers of the patients, or even friends of the association, who can help us in many other ways with the admin and all that. Yeah.
I see. So we don't have to be a caregiver or a person living with lupus in order to be a volunteer with the association, I guess. Yes? Is that what
No,
you're saying?
you don't have to, yes.
Right.
We even once had a volunteer who did our accounts for us. So he's an accountant.
I see. Okay, so he can help out with the administrative work. So,
Yeah,
Catherine,
he did our accounts.
he did your
sorry.
accounts.
Yeah.
It's okay. So, Catherine.
Okay, actually, yes.
For young people.
Okay. Yeah, for young people, we have not much of an issue, because we have, in fact, we have all the JCs as well as the Sec 3 and Sec 4 students coming in. Basically because they are Interact clubs. So from the Interact club, they are actually our existing groups. And from there, they actually like passing a baton. From JC2, when they are going to do the exam, they recruit the JC1. So it's a rolling, like a snowballing effect. So a lot of youths are coming in. So similarly with the university, like the NUN, the private universities are coming in. So this has the passing of baton. So there are good words spoken from their experiences, and they show the youth. And this is where the youth too. Yeah.
The connection is not very good, Catherine, but it's okay. So for IMH, I think our volunteers are quite diverse. So besides young people, sometimes it's like families, like mother and son, and the son would have their own groups of friends, and then the mother would have their own elderly groups. So when they come together, and it's such a good space to volunteer in. Okay, how about Peng Yip? So it might be quite daunting, for young people to volunteer with somebody maybe in their 70s. I'll be very afraid, can I speak that language? In fact, one of our audience, Nathaniel, he's asking, do you need to speak Cantonese to volunteer at Kwangwaishu Hospital?
It's not really necessarily have to speak that dialect. Actually, most of the patients in Kwangwaishu now, actually they can speak Mandarin, they can understand Mandarin. You can speak to them in Mandarin also. Of course, you can speak the dialect is a bonus to them. Actually, they are like people who can speak the dialects. But at the present moment, I think all the younger generation now, they are not really well versed with their own dialects. I think so.
Yeah, right.
So, So actually, communication, it doesn't really necessarily to be through words of love language. Actually giving them some sort of like a smile and hold the hand tenderly also serve the same purpose. We feel happy about that.
So it's
Okay.
not just the verbal language, but also the body
Yeah,
language.
correct.
Or you can draw a picture.
Sometimes you
and
show
then,
actually you show your passion to them. You can talk to them. Actually, some of them they can understand you, but they cannot reply you. That's it. Even though you need somebody ready to listen to them, to talk to them. That's it.
So sometimes I guess the residents, they just need a listening ear, somebody to listen to their
correct.
stories or complaints
Correct.
or what they have happened in their lives. Yeah, I think providing that listening
Even though
ear
you
would be good
you
enough.
can't really solve the problem, if you're listening to them, I think they're happy about that. Yeah.
Okay, so now this is the last question from Stephanie. How do we register to become a volunteer? Okay, so Catherine, for IMH, like if Stephanie wants to volunteer with IMH, how would she be able to sign up? Is it to email our
Okay,
organization?
we do have various groups that has actually on their own Facebook. You can actually join them with the Facebook, or you can write to us. We have the IMH volunteer inquiry line. You can write in to us, and we will actually respond to you from there. Yeah, but for the moment, all volunteers activities are suspended. So we will call upon you when the door is open. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. How about Irene?
Okay, for Tan Tock Seng Hospital, you can contact the hospital directly. For Lupus Association, can call our office, or you can go to both our websites and sign in to apply to be a volunteer.
Okay,
And we
so
will
they are like
welcome you very
separate
much.
registration. So if I want to volunteer with the Lupus Patient Support Group, then I will email Tan Tock Seng Hospital, is that? And then if I want to volunteer with the Lupus Association, then I will email your association. Is that right?
Yes, if they want to be in the lupus support group with Tan Tock Seng Hospital, they can join us as a volunteer first, and then we can later on register her for Tan Tock Seng Hospital, because
see.
we do ward visits not only at Tan Tock Seng, we also do ward visit at the other hospitals, except for Tan Tock Seng is a much more regular thing.
I see, because the
It's on a
association
weekly
serves the
basis.
country. So that's why you
Yes,
go
of
to
course.
different hospitals.
Yes, we are
Okay.
a national body.
Right. Okay, thank you so much, Irene. How about
Thank
Peng
you.
Yip for Kwangwaishu Hospital?
Kwangwaishu actually have a website. You can again go to the website to register your volunteering service, and also you can call Kwangwaishu to call a person called Miss Soon.
Miss
She
Soon.
is a volunteer manager, so you can call her. Then we'll welcome you to join us.
So Peng Yip, for your volunteers, would they be able to choose whether they want to volunteer with the satellite centers, the hospital, or the nursing home? Or based on their interest?
Actually, just based on the interest. Some of them actually like to really volunteer in the what they call it, the care center. The many of them, and also some of them actually they want to volunteer in the what they call it, the therapy center, and so on and so forth. We are welcome them also, but most of them we join in the hospital itself to serve the patient in the wards, and also we like to have a volunteer have some hand skill to help us to actually make lanterns.
Okay.
Yeah,
Make lanterns so that
we
you
need people to help us because we are really short-handed.
Okay, or maybe we can help you to break another record, huh? Maybe we have a 36-meter long corridor instead of 34. Okay, thank you very much for staying tuned, almost an hour. We have come to the end of the program, and we hope that you can think about it, how you want to, start volunteering with healthcare organizations, because you can make a difference in their lives. This Singapore Heritage Festival will go on till the end of the month. If you want to know what are the other activities as part of the program, please log on to SG Heritage Fest at gov.sg. Yes. So we have come to the end of the program, and thank you so much. Thank you to our guests as well. Have a lovely Saturday. Stay home and keep safe.